The video game crash is in full swing. A lot of layoffs have been announced. A lot of companies are are firing their employees left and right, and the decline is in full swing. Of course, I predicted this years and years ago. Like, I legit think it might have been around 2013. Like, it's certainly one of the reasons why I started uploading on the channel, talking about this, right? Talking about how what these companies were doing was unsustainable and how Nintendo would rise to the top, right? And that's exactly what happened. Nintendo has been dominating all generation with the Switch, actually long before that. And more of these companies that have been trying to compete with them are going under and folding. Kept alive only by desperate fanboys who are unwilling to acknowledge or admit that Nintendo is superior, right? I don't PlayStation and Xbox have never really been viable platforms. They have entirely subsisted because of the giant conglomerates that enable them. But now, with things the way they are in the world, layoffs are occurring, which means that talent is not being accumulated. People are not settling into their roles. They're not productive, and they're not producing new and interesting features, right? It's really easy to say that they can just throw money at the problem, but that's not how you make the next Wii. Okay, that's not how you make the next DS. That's not how you make the next Switch. Xbox has made statements about how they have no idea what the future of the company is going to be outside of we're just going to focus on the cloud, bro. We're going to do Game Pass. Like, the reality is that Xbox is done. PlayStation is done. The third parties that have been enabling them are done, right? All they have left are a scant few IPs that have been milked to death over the past couple of years. They have Final Fantasy, they have Street Fighter, they have Tekken, they have Yakuza, they have all this stuff. But more and more and more, this stuff is starting to crumble. It's starting to shatter. First of all, because these games, these old, tired, derivative IPs, have to compete with the best video games in existence, right? Super Mario Bros. Wonder alone is probably a bigger deal than everything that PlayStation or Xbox has ever produced, right? There isn't a single video game that's bigger than Super Mario Bros. Wonder, right? Nothing is going to outperform Super Mario Bros. Wonder, right? But the narrative has always been that Super Mario Bros. Wonder doesn't matter. Mario's lame. 2D platformers are lame. But that's, you don't decide that, right? The audience decides that. Right? This is the thing that Xbox and PlayStation fans don't understand, is that as long as people like Nintendo, what they believe, what the non-consumers believe, does not matter, right? So, even today, I'm harassed every day for liking Nintendo, right? I have YouTube videos getting reported to youtube.com. I have people just going crazy, attacking me all the time, doing commentary videos. And the reason for it is simply because I like Nintendo. That's the only reason. It has nothing to do with anything else I'm doing on the platform, right? I'm not going after anyone in particular, right? That is the only reason. Liking Nintendo is a morally reprehensible thing to the gaming community. Now, obviously, this is ridiculous, right? Because plenty of people feel the same way I do. But, it's something that the gaming community does not want to accept, right? They don't like acknowledging that Nintendo is better and more financially stable than its competition. The narrative has always been that, Nintendo's going to leave the industry, but that's simply not going to happen. And that's becoming more and more obvious because when have you ever heard of Nintendo layoffs, right? In fact, the last time that the topic even came up, that was the famous moment where Satoru Iwata just took the pay cut. He had the executives all take a pay cut so they wouldn't have to fire anyone. And to me, that was a very good, strong indication of where Nintendo is going in the next 10 years, right? Iwata's Nintendo is still very much alive because all those people whose jobs he protected are there now working on new games, right? It's crazy when you look at Nintendo's employee retention rate. Something like 4 out of the 5 guys who made the original Super Mario Bros. Game worked on Super Mario Bros. Wonder, right? They had a 98.7 employee retention rate. Nobody leaves Nintendo, right? Unless it's to be a plant for another company. That guy who worked at Platinum Games. Actually, I think he was working for Nintendo of Europe. So maybe that makes a little bit more sense. But maybe that's a different thing. But like when you look at like how Nintendo is run, right? When you look at like the superiority of the games they put out, when you look at their output, when you look at their superior hardware, which is better than the most high end of gaming PCs, right? When you look at, how they treat their employees, when you look at like, just compare them to everyone else in the industry, there is no comparison. Nintendo is better. But the corrupt gaming industry doesn't want to admit it, right? They bent over backwards. They made excuses. They hyped up everything under the sun. They defended obviously plagiarized products. They rigged game award shows. They did this and that. Like, they did everything in their power to try and downplay Nintendo. You have guys in their 40s who are aggressively trying to tell you that, like, Nintendo used to be good, man, but they lost the way. Like, it's simply absurd, right? Like, it is not true, at least at this point. Like, obviously, I don't believe that, like, any company is going to stay, like, this good forever. I think it's inevitable that, like, at some point there's going to be some kind of decline. It happens all the time, right? But, like, I have seen no signs of that for Nintendo. Like, there has been no real decline in quality. There's been no real like red flags. Like, all the concerns that people raise are laughable, like usually concerns of censorship. Like, it's all just like a complete it's just an excuse to attack the company, to criticize them, right? And then meanwhile, like, Valve, PlayStation, and Xbox can do whatever they want with no recourse, right? Like, how many people, like, today you're seeing people try to defend The Last of Us Part 2. Now, that game is so notoriously infamous that it's never, ever going to take off. But at the same time, like, it's kind of disgusting that people feel comfortable defending No Man's Sky, defending The Last of Us Part 2, defending Cyberpunk 2077, right? Like, it's disgusting to see people, like, seriously try and pretend that The Witcher 3 was one of the best games ever made, when in reality, it's not even playable. It's so strange. People are, like, lambasting Pokemon for glitches it does not have, while praising an unfinished game in Pow World, right? Like, the double standard is very, very evident if you're paying attention, right? And I do think this is a really good example of that. Like, when you look at how Nintendo handled rough times, right, with the 2014 period where they lost a little bit of money and, like, people were concerned about the future of the company. Like, back then, people were saying they were going to go third party. Nintendo was finished. Da, da, da. Like, where are those kinds of talks now, right? Who is addressing the reality that Xbox is not going to be around much longer, that PlayStation is not going to be around much longer, that their games are not good and nobody's going to miss them when they're gone? Like, who is addressing this? Like, the reality is that these companies are in a bad place. All of them are in a bad place. And none of them are going to be able to rise up and stop what's coming, right? The Nintendo monopoly is upon us, and it's becoming harder and harder and harder to downplay the dominance that Nintendo has over the gaming industry.